Okay, so this is the Reading to Understand Academic Skills series. So I'm just going to give you guys some tips and yeah, let's get into it. So the first part of trying to make sure that you are really reading to understand the material and you're taking in all that knowledge is to create an environment that allows you to be productive. So you're going to want a distraction-free environment, meaning no noise, a lot of movement or interruptions. Some people, if they feel like their environment, like you can't find an environment that's distraction free, you can use things like white noise or instrumental music to kind of block out that extra sound. Um, and you're going to want to have a space that has some good lighting for your reading. It's recommended that you actually don't read on your bed because it usually makes it take longer and it's less productive. And if you feel like you're on a time crunch, you can also try to plan and schedule your time. So let's say you have an hour, you know you have a certain amount of pages you need to get through. You say, okay, what's my page goal in this hour that I want to make sure I understand and I understand it well. And this is just like a little cute picture here showing all of the things that you can do within your room to kind of create that distraction-free environment. So before you actually start reading, you're going to want to think about why you're reading whatever you're reading. So if it's in an English class, you're going to want to think about maybe themes, motifs, things that you know your professor is going to want you to be considering and maybe is crucial to the text. And that way you have that in your mind as you're going through the pages. If it's more like a textbook, you are going to want to think maybe your teacher gave you a list of study questions, or you're just thinking about the main topics through the lecture. A great way to kind of figure out if you don't know what's important, especially in textbooks, is to take the time to read all the material, look at the headings, the pictures, all of that, because it'll kind of give you an idea of what you're about to get into before you like dive in. So yeah, basically make sure that you know what your goal is, what you're supposed to learn coming out of whatever you're reading. And then I just wrote down a bunch of ways that you can like basically annotate or interact with the text. Some people, they just like to like mark up the pages in whatever way they'll remember it later. So question marks could be like, oh, I was confused on that. You could like section things out into different ideas in the text, etc. Other people like to actually explain the text, which would be more of an annotation style. You could just full on take your own separate notes aside with the text so that way it's all in your own words, what you think you need to know. Other people like to take the entire concept of either the book or the text and just like write it out, give the main idea and then write all the details below. Mapping is kind of an interesting one. Basically, the idea is you have your central thing in the middle and you kind of create like an organized like chart of all of your ideas. And then another way that you can do it is every now and then you would just summarize in your own words whatever you're reading, and that can help people too. So if you haven't tried any of these out and have felt like you've been unsuccessful in the past, maybe try something new and see if it works better for you. And so then now we're going to go to when you're actually reading. So a lot of people say that the best way to kind of have a better understanding of the text is to really go in with the highlighting and taking notes. So sometimes like highlighting is a really great way to remind you what you think is most important. So if you highlight the whole text, you're probably not going to get that much value out of it because everything's highlighted and now you don't know what's important. But it's a great way to just get those details that you really want to make sure you remember. And then on the side, you can also take notes, which will give you the opportunity to maybe remember a concept, but the way that you would remember it yourself as opposed to how the text summarizes it. And that might help with reinforcement, especially if you're going to go back and study that material later or write an essay on it. So summarizing. Summarizing is great because after you finished a section or reading, you can just make sure that you for sure understand it, because if you can't summarize what you read, then you know that you probably are having a hard time focusing and understanding what's going on in the text. And that way, if you go back and you remember that, like, you're like, okay, but I kind of don't really understand this part, you can make sure to like maybe write that down. And then when you talk with your professor, you can make sure to ask questions about whatever you felt like you weren't super confident on. So it's like a little bit of a study prep too. So other ways to stay engaged with the text. A lot of people like to read aloud. I know that not all environments allow for that, but if you have the opportunity to, sometimes it can keep you focused and better engaged with the text. Audiobooks can be a really great way if you're somebody who has a hard time literally reading. The audiobook can be helpful if you can find one, and then you can just take your notes as you listen. Some people like to use graphs or pictures to try to confirm understanding of the material. If you write it down in a picture, maybe it'll help you process it better. And then try to connect the material to something you already are familiar with. Make little ways to remember it, like mnemonics and other stuff like that. So this is just a list of a few other resources that you can look into. I'll post these slides. You should be able to see them. And this will just allow you to maybe look at some resources and get additional help if there's something that we didn't cover. But that is really all I have. Yeah, feel free to email any of us. We're the academic success, student success tutors. So there's Danielle, Maddie, and I, and we're all here to help. You just go on the Writing Center and you can schedule an appointment with us anytime. All right, thank you guys.